what it takes to be a successful business executive in the US and how it's different from India. My father passed away when I was 12 years old. And like I mentioned, I went to Kendriya Vidyalaya Central School, and I came through the Indian education system where I did the classic IIT, IIM. Yes. I have an engineering degree. Joined McKinsey at after business school more than 30 years ago.
Fortune 500 companies which are headed by Indians now. What do you think has contributed to our success?
I think many things have contributed to the success of Indians. I think it goes back to the culture and history of India, their grounding in Eastern values, deep listening, humility. One of the Indian leaders I admire a lot is Satya Nadella of Microsoft.
Are there any other traits or qualities that you see across the board?
You need to have a view. You need to have a clear sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. What I learned from Gen Z is actually speaking out, even on social media.
So at McKinsey, have you already changed the criteria of hiring people or the set of qualities that you're looking for?
AI and Gen AI will have a huge impact on the world. Mahatma Gandhi actually said, live every day like it's your last and learn every day like you live forever. In a world full of demoralization, I bring a smile to the world.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Rising Immigrant Show. I'm your host Jasmine, and today I'm going to introduce you to a very special guest, Ramesh Srinivasan. Ramesh is a senior partner at McKinsey Company, one of the largest and prestigious consulting firms. Ramesh also is a dean at the Power Forum, which is McKinsey's leadership program for CEOs. It helps them with their development, helps them navigate issues at workplaces. Ramesh co-authored a book called The Journey of Leadership, which came out earlier this month, and it's a very exciting book. It helps leaders navigate issues that they routinely encounter in their workplaces to help them become better leaders and to encourage and motivate the workforce. So allow me to welcome Ramesh Srinivasan. Ramesh, thank you so much for coming to my show today.
Thank you for having me.
So honored that you're here in person with me, and this is something that I've been thinking about since a while now, but I'm so glad that this is happening and you're here with me today.
Thank you, Jasmine. I've enjoyed our interactions and great to be here.
Yeah. So Ramesh, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where in India did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And when did you move to the US?
I was born in India. I was actually born in Delhi, not too far away from where you're from. And my father was in the military engineering services, so we traveled around a fair bit. I grew up mostly in Chennai, in the south. I went to what is called Kendriya Vidyalaya, that is, or called Central School. So it's a school for kids whose parents are in the military or associated services. I was actually very lucky and fortunate to have a fantastic education at very affordable cost. I had some great teachers, and that's the environment in which I grew up. I then went to college in India. I met my wife at business school and joined McKinsey after business school more than 30 years ago. We spent the first 11 years in India. And we moved to New York in 2005, about 19 years ago. Jasmine, we've been here. We're living in New York since 2005.
So this is home now.
New York is definitely home. And I actually think, New York is a great place for immigrants to come from all over the world. It's had that reputation for several hundred years. And it's a great place where people from different walks of life, different parts of the world come in. It's a great source of new ideas. And that's why we love New York. We are New Yorkers.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, we love New York for what it is. There's so much to do. And I feel like there's so much inspiration around you because everybody here is on a path. And even if you feel less motivated or, you wake up and you feel like, oh, today's not a great day, but you step out of the house and you meet so many inspiring people, people who are out and about ready to make it happen. So, Ramesh, if I talk about Indian leaders in the US, so you have some considerable experience working with the top leaders at some of the firms, especially in healthcare, in technology, and in banking. What do you think has contributed to their success? Because when I open the news, I see Sundar Pichai. He's the CEO of Google. I have Microsoft CEO. I have like so many other companies, Fortune 500 companies, which are headed by Indians now. What do you think has contributed to our success?
I think many things have contributed to the success of Indians. I think it goes back to the culture and history of India, their grounding in Eastern values, deep listening, humility, some of the ideas that we cover in our book. I'm sure we'll get to it as we talk about the journey of leadership. One of the Indian leaders I admire a lot is Satya Nadella of Microsoft. He talks about the growth mindset and the idea that leaders should learn all the time. He himself is a curious and voracious reader. I've had a chance to meet with him a few times, and sets that expectation for all the leaders at Microsoft for them to learn and grow, get feedback, and develop as leaders. And I think that is one of the attributes that I feel has contributed to the success of Indian leaders in the business world in the US.
Oh, excellent. So you mentioned reading. Are there any other traits or qualities that you see across the board? Do you see, like, if you've interacted with, let's say, I know you've interacted with hundreds of CEOs, but is there like something that you see that is prevalent in like most of them, if not all? Is there a specific quality or trait that you can point out?
I'd like to broaden the discussion, not just from Indian leaders to all leaders that we have seen. I used to lead partner learning for McKinsey. So I've seen a number of partners from McKinsey go through their leadership journey. And then as Dean of the Bauer Forum, we've had more than 500 CEOs who've gone through the Bauer Forum. As I reflect on their own journey, the idea of the concept of what we call inside-out leadership is what we've observed in successful leaders. And what we mean by that concept is these leaders take a lot of time to reflect on their own purpose, who they are, what drives them, what are they trying to do in the world, what is their purpose, and use that to inspire teams, inspire institutions. What we are finding is that this concept of an imperial CEO or leader who knows all the answers to questions in the world, and in a world that is changing so fast with so much complex geopolitics, almost by definition, no leader can have all the answers to questions. So obviously as leaders, you need to have a view, you need to have a clear sense of purpose, but then you need to be able to listen, you need to be humble enough and use that to inspire teams, inspire institutions. That's what we've seen in all these leaders, Jasmine.
No, amazing. You just mentioned that leaders need to navigate some geopolitical issues. It's no more enough to be just good at your job, right? We need to know how to navigate challenges within the company and outside in our environment, which includes like, political unrest there's so much going on right now. And I can't even if I was to mention those things, it'll take a while. What do you think helps a leader navigate issues like that?
Thank you for that question. I actually think when I look at the world, you mentioned geopolitics are extremely complex. Climate change is here to stay. Technology disruptions are underway. Big demographic shifts with Gen Z coming into the workforce. So all of these, remote working post-COVID has been another challenge. These 4 or 5 challenges are important trends for any leader to understand. Not just senior leaders or CEOs, but frankly, even leaders entering into the workforce, or frankly, even students graduating from college need to understand these trends and understand how these political, economic, social forces are impacting what's happening day to day. Where are there opportunities for them to come into the workforce and have an impact? Often at McKinsey, we say where to compete matters much more important than how to compete. So choices they make on what to study, or which areas to get into the workforce, where they invest in themselves. All of these are important decisions that will then impact fulfillment and how enjoyable and meaningful a career is for any person, Jasmine.
Making sure that choosing the right fields and also understanding the trends.
Correct.
So if we talk about these trends for a minute, there's two trends that we are seeing since COVID. One is a shift from 9 to 5 jobs, the traditional working setup. And the second is a younger generation entering the workforce with a different mindset. What have your observations been as a big part of the industry? What do you see around yourself?
I was in an interview with an Akanksha alum, and as you know, I'm involved with a charter school network in India called Akanksha, and one of our alums, Shubhashri, who graduated and now is working at Goldman Sachs. She told me recently that, no question is stupid, but questions can be lazy. So what I find in these successful people coming into the workforce is really bringing a level of curiosity, not being afraid to ask questions. This idea of no question is stupid really resonates with me. That's the advice I give to people coming into the workforce as well. Like, ask all the questions, get coaching and feedback from people around you. Use that to experiment and try new things, get experiences from people. What I learned from Gen Z is actually speaking out, even on social media, growing up, and even at 30 years at McKinsey, I've always loved being an advisor, coach, mentor. That's my profile. I like to be in the background, support my clients and support my colleagues. The book is actually forcing me and giving me a platform to be more visible, be more active on social media. Sure. And I'm learning a lot from Gen Z colleagues and people around me on how to be more vocal, how to speak out, of course, in a thoughtful way and not say something inappropriate, but still be much more visible, much more vocal. I'm enjoying and learning a lot in this process. And my advice to Gen Z colleagues and people entering the workforce is, like I said, learn and use all the opportunities around you. No question is stupid. Questions could be lazy. So working hard and doing the best they can in whatever role they're playing is what I advise them, Jasmine.
Got it. So being curious, having the right mindset, entering the workforce is key according to you.
Correct.
If we talk about AI and how it's disrupting the talent currently, there's a few skills which are probably going to be irrelevant or less important in the future. Now, and then there's a few skills that are going to get even more, like they're going to get more value. So what, according to you, is going to change? And how can the current and the workforce which is entering the market right now, how can they navigate this really fast change in the way we're doing things?
So AI and Gen AI will have a huge impact on the world. All the research done by McKinsey points to that. The one thing I will say is that the role of the human in the loop is not going away. So the skills around creativity, collaboration, judgment, ethics, all of that will continue to be quite important. And it's going to take a long time to disrupt these skills. And frankly, our view is that these skills will become even more important. At the same time, some of the routine tasks, I think AI, machines will continue to take those tasks over. I always say all leaders need to think about who is their co-pilot and how do they have an AI, Gen AI co-pilot with them so that they can use technology for their benefit to have more impact and do the best they can for society and the world around them. That's the vision that we have and I have for how to use AI for our benefit, how to use AI for society's benefit, like any other technology that's come before us, Jasmine.
So we've sort of adapted to that as we go on.
Correct.
So at McKinsey, have you already changed the criteria of hiring people, or the set of qualities that you're looking for? Has that evolved already, or are you working on that actively?
I think the criteria we look for are quite timeless. So we look for people who are good at problem solving, who are good at communication, collaborating with others, who show leadership qualities. So those qualities, like I was saying, are going to be important, independent of AI and Gen AI. I do think having a basic understanding of technology will become quite important. So we do hire people who have a good understanding of data analytics, who can use technology to have an impact on the world. So we look for that in the experiences that we have. And the people we look for, we expect them to bring these human-centric qualities that I just talked about, which we think will continue to be important even in the future.
I'm going to go back to our previous discussion about Indian diaspora and what skills or traits have helped us become successful. I wanted to take a moment. I know as an Indian myself and navigating the culture and society here in the US, I've come across a few challenges. I feel like we're not good at a few things that we can do better at. I don't want to name a few, but I wanted your opinion on this. What do you think is an area of improvement for us? How can we better advocate for ourselves in workplaces and, be better team members?
I am curious about your learnings, but I'll start with my thoughts and then would love your inputs as well. When I moved, my wife and I and our kids moved to the US in 2005, I actually worked with a coach to help me with the integration into the US culture. I was already a partner at McKinsey at that time, and I'd spent 11 years with McKinsey. Okay. So I had the basic consulting toolkit. And yet I realized, and McKinsey realized, that I need to adapt to the culture. And I had a fantastic coach. And in fact, I would say my wife and I, we had a couple who helped us. The wife was a history teacher at NYU. So she took us through US history, especially Civil War, what happened, and how those important shifts still show up in today's world. And that was very eye-opening for us and gave us a very deep understanding of US history and culture. And what happens even today. And both my wife and I really valued that. And every time I see somebody coming from India to the US, I encourage them to study US history, especially that Civil War and how it plays out today's world. So that was a great learning.
Understand where you're at, understand the country, the history, so to give you some perspective.
That's right. That's right. And come at it with a very fact-based view. And then, the husband, who was a senior business executive, had recently retired from one of the largest US companies. He taught me a lot about what it takes to be a successful business executive in the US and how it's different from India. And two pieces of advice that he shared with me that still, remain with me today. One is, when I enter into a room, I'm much more conscious about where am I sitting, what role am I playing, and if I am expected to lead the discussion and lead the room, I will take a view that I'll take a position that's at the center of the room and not be afraid to have that visibility and attention on me. Of course, now over time, I'm in rooms where I'm playing more of a coach role or an advisor role, having somebody else, another colleague, play that central role. Then I will make sure they're comfortable taking that spot, and I'll play more of a coach role. But at that time, I remember being much more conscious and deliberate about that. And then the other advice he gave me was to come into a room. I was never and I will never be the person who speaks the most in the room, even though I'm an extrovert by nature. But I still, my orientation is to listen more and speak less. And he taught me that that's actually not a bad quality to have. But I practice doing two things in a meeting. One is to listen to everybody and synthesize what I'm hearing, and not do that too frequently, but do that in an hour-long meeting. I would do that a couple of times so that I'm really playing back what I've heard and helping the group understand all the different voices, and and if I feel I'm ready for that, providing that synthesized view. And then 2, coming into a meeting with what are the 1 or 2 questions I want to ask, so that I'm clear that at the right time I would pose those questions for the group and use that as a way to get all voices in and listen to everybody. And even today, when I go into a meeting, in fact, I had a meeting this morning over breakfast with a very senior executive. I walked in being clear of the 1 or 2 questions I wanted to ask him and the 1 or 2 ideas I wanted to share. So that's been a piece of advice that has always stayed with me, Jasmine.
Got it.
But I'm curious about your thoughts on this topic.
Definitely. I mean, as a young working professional, when I first entered the workplace, I worked as a quality manager at a food safety, division of a fast casual restaurant chain in New York City. And then I led to start 2 food businesses where I was involved in all different aspects of the business. I thought that we as Indians are very good at what we're told to do.
Right.
We are very good at following instructions. We're very diligent. We're very sincere. What we really lack, and it goes back to what you said, is speaking up.
Right.
Talking about yourself, presenting your experience, your knowledge, your questions, your curiosity in a way that helps you grow and also for you to understand what's going on. I feel like we are inherently shy, or not exactly shy. Some of us are extroverts.
Yes.
But since our education system or the way we were raised has taught us not to raise our hand,
Yes.
we feel uncomfortable in making our presence felt. So we're great workers, and I don't know if you see that in the workplace as well, but we're scared to raise our hand, tell our stories, be proud of who we are, and, contribute to the team in a very confident manner. What do you have? What do you think
love
about
the
that?
idea of raise your hand. That resonates a lot with me. And I think having a wider perspective of what's happening in the world, that's why, I felt all the investment in, U.S. history, or even, I would say now global geopolitics is so important for somebody even early on in the workforce. And using that, have a perspective. I encourage all people who come in, who are new to McKinsey, to have a perspective on any problem we're solving, and then use that to balance asking questions and then stating a point of view when needed. So that's the way I think about it. Very consistent with what you're saying, Jasmine.
That's good. You touched on a few skills that you mentioned in your book. You spoke about listening. And there's a few other skills that you talk about in your book. We're going to come back to those later, but I just wanted to talk about the listening skill. Many of us, even in our routine lives, struggle on being good listeners. We learn a few things, we want to be out there, we want to say the right things, but we don't know how to be good listeners. What are some of the practical things someone like me or anybody listening can do to be a good listener in the room?
So we have a number of micro practices in the book. We actually have 100 micro practices in the appendix, and a number of them are related to listening. My top few are just starting with how are you doing at the beginning of a conversation or when you're meeting somebody new, not just as a, check the box, how are you doing, but truly meaning, how are you doing, so that you understand where a person is coming from, and what they've experienced or anything top of mind for them.
So simple, but yet so profound, right?
Exactly. I think the other is to bring a mindset of curiosity to asking what the other person thinks about any topic. Because I always find, I have a point of view, but I'm always curious to see, what somebody else is thinking. It's a great opportunity for learning. Mahatma Gandhi actually said, live every day like it's your last and learn every day like you live forever. And the best way of learning is to ask a question. And so I'm always curious, anybody I meet, if they're bringing a different perspective or a different angle, what an incredible opportunity to learn. Like even in the last few minutes we've been together, there are ideas like you raise your hand. I love that. And if you're okay with that, I will, share that with other people.
Yeah.
So those are all things that I feel is a second way of listening. I mentioned this point about walking into a room with a question, whether it's for a one-on-one discussion or for a team meeting or a group discussion. Ask a question to the group. You'll hear 10 different perspectives. That is another way of listening. So those are all ways I see of good listening, Jasmine.
Got it. You also talk about self-esteem versus ego. These were some of the things that sort of spoke to me when I was reading your book. There's a very thin line. You want to be confident. You want to have a higher self-worth or a sense of your own self, so you can take the decisions you need or be present at the workplace or be have your voice heard. But you could also be seen as a narcissist. Right. Somebody who has a lot of ego and always thinks that he or she is right. Now, how do you navigate that thin line?
Leadership is about managing polarities. And this is one of the ideas we talk in the book. One of the leaders who's in the book is Rita Ora of MasterCard Foundation. There are
very profound story.
Yeah, there are 24 amazing leaders in the book. I'll pick one or two stories in our discussion. Rita Ora, the reason I picked Rita is, she is a leader who brings incredible courage, vision, boldness. She set a vision of creating 30 million jobs in Africa by 2030 at a time when it was not clear where these jobs are going to come from and how they're going to create these jobs. And yet, she is incredibly vulnerable. And in the right setting with her team, I've seen her pose questions where she doesn't have all the answers to those questions. She poses those questions to her team. She poses those questions to her partners. She poses those questions to governments that she's working with in Africa as a way to source their ideas and co-create solutions. Listening and humility are core values of the MasterCard Foundation. And she's a great leader who embodies, in my view, both the ability to be confident, set a bold vision, set expectations for her team, and be vulnerable, have deep listening, be humble, and co-create solutions with people in the ecosystem.
So I've read her story, but I want you to tell that story again for my audience. She has an incredible story where, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about her?
So many stories about Rita, but at a time, some of their partners had feedback for the foundation, asking them to be more responsive and really, giving them messages that Rita felt were tough but reasonable. And so she took the time to hear them out, get feedback from people around in their ecosystem, and use that as a source of learning, use that to evolve what the foundation does, how they operate, and use that to be even more responsive and do the work faster, better for the world.
Got it. If we talk about drivers or things that drive people or motivate people in the workforce, what are some of the things that you have seen or observed as a key driver? What keeps people going?
Dan Pink in his book Drive talks about drivers of motivation being autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I actually like those three themes. Autonomy, meaning people having a sense that they are empowered. They're empowered to come up with the right answers, make decisions, get things done. Mastery, meaning that they get better and better at a set of skills and what they do. And purpose is a theme we've been talking about already, a purpose being a sense of what gives them meaning. And that meaning could come from not just self-growth, it could come from a sense of belonging in the team. It could come from, helping the company or the institution they're part of. It could come from starting up something and doing something as an entrepreneur. It could come from making a contribution to society and the broader community around them. Whatever that might be, leaning into those sources of meaning for an individual. So those are the drivers of motivation that I've seen.
Nice. So what drives you? What motivates you? What motivates you to wake up every day and show up for your, colleagues, your family, people in your community?
I've been through some tough situations in life, had some deep personal loss. My wife and I, we've had to go through that over the last 15 years. So that has forced us to think about our own purpose and why we do what we do. And the more I've gotten professional help and thought about that question, in a world full of demoralization, I bring a smile to the world. I bring hope. I bring optimism, a sense of possibility. And McKinsey has just given me a platform to do that. This book is another vehicle to be able to help leaders, support leaders, unlock their own potential and do great things in the world. So that's what gives me purpose. Even this morning when I was thinking about my breakfast or this podcast today, and I was very excited about meeting you, talking about these topics, helping your listeners and audience unleash their own purpose potential. That's what gives me energy and keeps me going.
That's good. Rightly said. In uplifting others, we uplift ourselves.
Absolutely. Like in the work I do, a big reason is I get as much energy, from these conversations, from helping people. That's what keeps me going.
And energy is definitely contagious. So if you come in the room smiling and you have big personality, you welcome everybody, that comes back to you. So kudos to you on that. What's your daily routine? What do you do when you wake up? Take me through your day.
Normally I wake up in the morning and I think about my intentions for the day. I think of my to-be list. One of the ideas that we talk about...
To be.
One of the ideas we talk about in the book is the concept of the to-be list, which is how do I want to show up today given my to-do list? So of course I have a to-do list and what I'm trying to do, the meetings, the deliverables I have for the day.
Sure.
How do I want to show up? And therefore I think about my to-be list. I have a cup of tea in the morning and my wife and I, we talk about what are we trying to get done today. I like to listen to Indian classical music. So that's sort of how my day begins. And I feel a day well begun is, kind of half the challenge is then is there. And then where there's a very high chance that, I get through the day properly. I spend a fair bit of time with clients. I spend some time with colleagues, either in problem solving on, topics we're working with, or being a coach and mentor to topics that they're working through. I do exercise. My goal is to exercise 7 days a week.
Wow. That's an aggressive goal.
It is an aggressive goal. I'm closer to 5 or 6.
We're trying to get by 3 days a week. I'm like, that's the mandate and that's all I'm doing. No more than, because they say, 3 times is good enough. I'm like, okay, that's it. That's it for me.
I am closer to 5, 6. I'm not yet at 7, but, despite the book launch and despite my client work and, I'm on 5 nonprofit boards, so I have a heavy agenda. And then I think on the weekends we meet friends. My wife and I were learning music.
Oh, wow.
So that's another task. So our focus is Indian classical, Carnatic music. But we also love, listening, learning Hindi songs sometimes, or Marathi or Telugu songs. So we have a bit of variety there as well.
Nice.
And then we do yoga once a week. So that's a bit of our daily, weekly
You guys are
routine.
busy.
We're busy. Actually, 6.5 out of our 7 days are structured. So only Saturday mornings till about 2 or 3 p.m. I leave completely unstructured. I set up no calls, no meetings, nothing else. But the the other 6.5 days, I have things going on and things set up in my calendar.
Oh, good. You talked a little bit about giving back to the community. You said, I know you're on the board of Akanksha Education Fund, whose goal is to provide educational opportunities to children in need. And I know you're involved with a few other organizations. Tell me a little bit about why giving back to the community is important for you, and how do you show up?
My father passed away when I was 12 years old. And like I mentioned, I went to Kendriya Vidyalaya Central School and I got a fantastic education at very, very affordable. I used to pay 5 rupees a month for a phenomenal education. And therefore, that's when I realized that if I do well and I'm successful, it is my obligation to give back. And so when I went to college, I started contributing back to the communities around us, and we would use dance and music and art form to teach these kids in need and communities around us how to learn. And I really enjoyed that process. I could see the impact it was having on those kids, and it was a great way for me, and I got energy back to giving and receiving energy. And so that's when I started the process. But then it was really a few years into McKinsey that my wife and we met with Shaheen Mistry, the founder of Akanksha, and right away I saw the passion, the high expectations she had, but also the quality of excellence that she was bringing to education and what she was doing with kids in need in the communities in Mumbai. And we started working with Akanksha, and we saw that it was a great cause, and we got a lot more compared to what we were giving, whether it's in terms of time or money or ideas or networks. And we've continued that process for over 20 years. And one thing led to another. When Shaheen founded Teach for India, we got involved with Teach for India. And then through that, a couple of more organizations as well. And about 5-6 years ago, I got more formally involved with social responsibility at McKinsey. And so that's the portfolio of things that we contribute to. And the more, especially around education in India over 20 years, even though I spend only a few hours a week, but the few hours a week adds up. And we now know enough. And so we're able to use our knowledge. And my wife, of course, she got into teaching. She has done 2 masters in teaching, and she was a teacher in a public school in Harlem. Her kids were at 27, 28 points above the city average in math. She was doing extremely well. And she's now founded her own nonprofit around problem solving, and she contributes that way. So both of us, education keeps us together. She knows a lot more about program design, impact, and how to be a teacher. And I've learned a lot about strategy, coaching leaders, board, governance, etc., fundraising. So we both then use the skills to contribute back.
How beautiful. I love that. Remind me again how many schools Akanksha has right now?
Akanksha has 26 schools.
And they run on a charter model.
They are all in partnership, in a public-private partnership with the government in the state of Maharashtra. And then through that, we also we've learned a lot about pedagogy, teacher training, how to deliver education, how to engage with parents. We're helping 2 municipal systems in Pune and in Nagpur support a few hundred schools. In these 2 cities. We share all our learnings back with these communities so that they can improve how education is done in the broader system as well.
Got it. I know this is like a topic in itself and needs another podcast, maybe with your wife, but just very briefly, what differences do you observe between the education system back home in India and now that you're so involved, especially through Akanksha, and education system here in the US, especially New York City? You mentioned like Harlem. Are there any similarities between these groups, or are they completely different?
You're absolutely right. This is a better question for my wife, Charita Joshi, than I. And I'll channelize my inner learnings from conversations with her. I think there are similarities in the sense that education equity or inequity is a problem both in the US and in India. And, Wendy Kopp, another leader who is actually in the book, who founded Teach for America and then is a founder of Teach for All and is a big supporter of Shaheen and Teach for India. She would say that education equity is a challenge even in the US. And there are some school districts which get a lot of investment where education is fantastic, best in class in the world. And then some education systems that don't get as much investment. And it's actually a tough environment for teachers. And outcomes are not as great. Students don't graduate and they don't go to college. And dropout rate is quite high. And it's actually a tough environment for students, for teachers to operate in. And similarly in India, education equity is a problem. There are some students in India, in Mumbai, who get like the best quality education in the world.
Right.
And some other schools where students don't get access to education. And that's what Akanksha is and many other institutions are trying to do to help these students get a very good education. And they're not just spending time on rote learning or memorization, but helping them really build their self-esteem, like you mentioned earlier, build their confidence, help them communicate, help them understand what's happening in the world.
Sure.
I was in a Teach for India classroom in September where along with Shaheen, I was doing a session on teaching with love and leading with love. And so that is a need in India as well. And so I think the education equity problem is present in both US and in India. The systems are dealing with it in slightly different ways and different experiments and solutions are being tested in both countries at this point.
Got it. I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to go back to your personal journey again. If you had a time machine and had the ability to go back in time and tell your younger self, give your younger self an advice, what would that be?
It's similar to what I shared with you. My, overall, I don't have any big regrets. And, I feel blessed and lucky that, at least professionally, I've done well. I think the advice I'd have for my younger self is ask even more questions and look for varied experiences. I came through the Indian education system where I did the classic, IIT, IIM. Yes. I have an engineering degree. I have in computer science. I have an MBA. And, maybe I could have taken a sabbatical and gone and done work in a different setting, maybe in a startup or maybe in a nonprofit. I've come to that in a different way after in my life. But my financial situation at that time needed me to be in the workforce and, and have and I felt very obligated to support my mom and my family. Looking back, maybe I could have had even more experiences. So I definitely encourage people I'm mentoring these days to ask questions, look for varied experiences, and use that then to shape a longer-term career in different ways. That's what I would tell my younger self.
No, that's amazing. I'd like to end on your future aspirations or something that you would like to do in the coming, years. What would that be?
I have 5 more book ideas. That
There you go. You're busy.
So, of course, right now my focus is on the journey of leadership and bringing that to as many people in the world and adding to the thinking and practice of leadership. But beyond that, I've been thinking about leadership more specifically in the social impact context. While the book had some business leaders and some social impact leaders, I could see myself doing a much deeper dive just on the social impact side. I could see myself getting more deeply immersed in education and healthcare. I do support causes around the Indian diaspora and the linkage between US and India. I could see myself digging deeper into that and making a contribution there. So there is enough and more to contribute in the world.
A lot on your plate.
So the challenge is really to pick causes. And one thing I've learned is, whatever I take on, I want to do well and do my best. So that's the spirit with which I'm thinking about my future at this point.
Very nice. Where can we find your book? And tell me how we can buy it.
You can find it on Amazon and, go read the book. Welcome your comments. I'm also quite active on LinkedIn. You can see my posts and my perspectives from different events I'm doing around the book. And that should also give people a way to order the book.
No, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ramesh. It was a pleasure for me to have you here in the studio. Thank you for sharing your perspective about workplace trends, about AI, about, things that you've observed from top leaders from around the world. And I hope my audience gets from you what I've, sort of taken. And I sincerely, thank you for coming in today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.